Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chaim.
Hey, I'm Adam Chaim.
And I'm Shoshana Chaim, and we are
Propelled by Plants. Today we bring to you episode 211, Ultimate Weight Loss with Chef AJ.
We work hard throughout the year to bring you high quality information and amazing guests, and we are taking a little break throughout the summer. But as you know, since you're listening to this podcast right now, it does not mean that we're stopping. What we've done is we've made a collection of our favorite guests and some of the most popular shows, and we're bringing them back to you for 3 reasons.
So basically, some of you have been with us since the beginning, and now that we have over 200 episodes, we thought that not everybody has been subscribed since the beginning, and we don't want you to miss some of these really important shows like the one that we have for you today. So every time we re-listen to our podcasts or our webinars or lectures, we take away something new or we realize something different.
And you might know somebody who can benefit from this show, and maybe you didn't think about it the first time. So as you're re-listening to the show and getting some new revelations, just kind of think about who could really benefit from this information in the show, and who do you want to pass it on to, and please share it with them.
So this week we're bringing back our episode with the famous celebrity chef AJ, who is so funny, and you got to see her in person. She's unreal.
We talk about calorie density, food addiction, and we get into some of her favorite things. And if you haven't checked out her book, Unprocessed, you probably should. The new cookbook is finally done. We created a cookbook that's perfect for any home, whether you're one person or a large family. Our beef or tofu with cookbooks is that you always want to make all the recipes in the book, and then you're left over with 1,000 ingredients and you don't know what to do with them. And also, recipes can be really, really difficult and take over an hour just for the main course. But this book is different. It's divided by ingredients, which allows you to A, batch cook and save time. Many recipes are made in under just 15 minutes. And B, plan your weekly meals based on ingredients, which saves you money. So head over to planttrainers.com or click on the link in the show notes and get your easy recipes for busy parents cookbook today. It's so simple, even your kids can make the meals. And did I mention that some of the recipes can be made in under 15 minutes?
And now for a moment of gratitude.
Since it's the summer and we want to always be true in our moment of gratitude, and we're not here to give one right now, we are just going to ask you to take a moment and find something that you're grateful for in your own life. We are here today with comedian turned chef, Chef AJ. Chef AJ, we're so grateful that you're on the show today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Before we begin and we get into our questions for today, do you have a moment of gratitude that you'd like to share with us and the listeners?
Absolutely. So as I sit here looking at my rescued mutt, Bailey, who I got from the shelter 1 year ago, I'm grateful for all the animal activists in the world that make this possible. I've been vegan for almost 40 years, and I started out completely for ethical reasons only. I was very unhealthy, and I did a lot of activism and rescue and stuff, but I got really burned out. I'm a highly sensitive person, and I just couldn't do that kind of work anymore. So I appreciate and I applaud all the people out there that are really on the front lines, doing the investigations, doing rescue, the kind of work that is so important and necessary that I am just not strong enough to do anymore. And I wanted to let all of them know how grateful I am for what they do every day and who they are.
I'd like to jump on that with you and be grateful for that as well, because it's not something that I think about that much, but thank you for bringing that to my awareness. So you used to be a comedian before you became a chef.
She's still a comedian.
But that's where I was going. I wanted to say you're definitely you're just a comedian / chef.
Now there's no expectations for this to be funny, right? Well, I did do some acting, in my 20s and 30s. I live in Los Angeles, and I did some shows. I was on the Tonight Show. I was on Letterman. I did some stand-up, and I did some sitcoms and soap operas. So I wasn't, famous or anything for it. I enjoyed it. It's hard work and, very competitive. So, I think I'm still pretty funny, but, I'm teaching, health and nutrition now. So I'll be funny when I can, but I hate that expectation because then it's like, no, she wasn't funny at all. So usually when I'm presenting live, I am funny though, because there's a lot of improvisational moments that can happen. So yeah, I think that when you're funny or just when you use humor, people listen more and they'll keep their ears open, and so that's a good way to deliver information. I'm not a singer, but I often write song parodies like Weird Al, and I'll often sing in my presentations, anything to keep the people awake.
Well, I'm sure if they're eating a good plant-based diet, then I'm sure that they're awake. But it definitely helps because it is a serious issue. There's a lot of serious research and serious outcomes, and I think that having a light and airy tone will help just kind of, yeah, you're right, keep everybody focused and keep everybody happy, and we need to be happy to be moving forward.
Sure.
AJ, you mentioned that you're teaching health and nutrition now, and you were a comedian. So how did you go from being a comedian to being a teacher?
Yeah, it wasn't planned, quite honestly. I'm not supposed to, but I always thought I was going to be a veterinarian because ever since I was little, that's what I wanted to be. And I even went to the University of Pennsylvania, and I joked that instead I became a vegetarian. It was just, it just sort of happened because my first year at college at the University of Pennsylvania in 1977, we had to work for a veterinarian as part of the program. And the very first day on the job, he handed me a tank of live salamanders and asked me to decapitate all of them because he was doing research on their corneas, protein lens regeneration experiments in the amphibian. And I didn't want to do that. I did it to one salamander, and I puked my guts out. It was the most horrific experience, and I became an instant vegan. And so I obviously never graduated Penn or became a veterinarian. However, to become a teacher, what happened is I had my own health crisis in 2003 when I had precancerous polyps in my sigmoid colon, and I had gone to the Optimum Health Institute to heal myself just using natural means because they wanted to do surgery and for me to take drugs, and I'm afraid of both. And so I had ended up going to culinary school, not because I ever thought I was going to be a chef, but just because the food tasted terrible at Optimum Health. And I figured if I'm going to have to eat healthy, it's going to have to taste better. And so that's how it happened. It sort of evolved. And then once I learned this stuff, I wanted to share it.
I think sharing it is really important, and you've done a great job at helping people to lose weight. And I love that you're not afraid of complex carbohydrates.
Oh, I'm afraid of them. That's all I eat. Am I allowed to say it? Well, I won't say the bad word, but it's funny because I just had some t-shirts designed for myself and my students as gifts, and they in huge letters say carb the F word up, but I didn't spell the F word. I spelled it F***CK. But yeah, I was afraid of carbs. And if you watch my talk on YouTube that I gave at the McDougall Advanced Study Weekend, I talk about the evolution of that because like other people, carbs are fattening. No, they're not. It's what we put on them. It's the butter and the cheese and the bacon and the sour cream on the potato that makes us fat. It's not the carbs, but that's all I eat is carbs. All I eat is starch, and with fruits and vegetables, of course. But carbs not only make you healthy, but they keep you satisfied, and they're really what make you thin. And if you look at all the populations around the world that eat all their calories from complex carbohydrates, they're thin and pretty much free of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. And how this got all turned around, I don't know. I guess blame Atkins. I don't know, how people could just really believe this nonsense.
I think when it comes to mixing a lot of the bad things that people want to eat with, a lot of the good things, and then you're right, everything else that we put on top, it's easy to kind of see maybe how it got a bad name.
What's interesting is my one of my brothers, the one that passed away from complications from morbid obesity, including diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. He was only thin twice in his life. He's actually a medical doctor, and the only two times my brother ever lost weight was one when he was in the Dean Ornish program, which is the way I teach people to eat low fat, high carb. And the second time was when he went to Duke University doing the Walter Kempner diet, which is basically the rice diet. And so the only two times this morbidly obese individual who struggled with his weight his whole life could lose weight is when all he ate was carbs.
And you talk about it all the time when you give presentations. We've seen you a couple of times talking about the red line, right? In your ultimate weight loss challenge. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, what I've done is, I really stand on the shoulders of people like Dr. Barbara Rolls at Penn State University, who's done the most research on calorie density than any other individual and has written a series of best-selling books on the subject called Volumetrics. And so what she determined, it's great. I got to interview her on my teleclass, was that human beings all over the world, and she studied this, by the way, in her laboratory at Penn State that studies human eating behavior, that human beings everywhere eat roughly the same amount of food per day, roughly the same amount in volume and the same amount by weight. And so if you want to lose weight but still continue to eat the same amount of food, the only way you can do that is to lower the calorie density of the food you eat. And all calorie density means is simply calories per pound of food. So if you follow the principles of calorie density, you don't have to memorize how many calories in the peach or how many calories in rice. You just have to know the general broad categories of foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, avocados, animal products, flours, sugars, things like that. It's not very many different categories of foods. And if you want to lose weight safely, sustainably, easily, permanently, all you have to do is change the calorie density of the food you eat per day. And if you can lower that by about 500 calories a pound, you can still not only eat the same amount of food by weight and volume that you were eating, but maybe even more food. I know that as a lean person, I'm eating way more food in terms of weight and volume than I did as a heavy person, because instead of eating things like oils, which are 4,000 calories a pound, although they're plant-based, or nuts and seeds, which are 2,600 to 3,200 calories a pound, or chocolate, which is 2,500 calories a pound, or breads and sugars, which are 1,500 to 1,800 calories a pound, I focus all my calories on eating whole plant foods in their natural state, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 600 calories a pound. And so all I did was draw this vertical red line after the legume category, because her work has shown, and other people's as well, that for most people, that if you keep the average calorie density per day to less than 600 calories a pound, I believe in her research it was 567, most people can eat what's called ad libitum, which is as much as they want, as often as they want, whenever they want, until comfortably full, which is not Thanksgiving full, I'm so full I want to throw up. But if you can do that, you can eat what is called an ad libitum style, which is what I eat, because so many people spend thousands of dollars on these programs that tell them to weigh and measure their food, eat only 7 ounces of non-starchy vegetable. And that's absolutely ridiculous, because we're not designed to have to weigh and measure our food. There's no other species in nature or throughout history that has, and all the plant-based doctors that I've worked with or for say the only way you would ever have to weigh and measure your food is if you're eating the wrong food. But if you eat food in nature, you can eat when hungry and stop when full. But we've got all messed up eating so many animal products and processed food, which is what Americans eat something like 92% of their calories from. And if we just eat the foods found in nature, we don't have to worry about weighing or measuring ourselves or our food or counting calories or carbs or points, because these foods at the lower caloric density, the fruits at 200 to 300 calories a pound, and the non-starchy vegetables at 100 calories a pound, and the potatoes and sweet potatoes and winter squashes at 400 calories a pound, and the whole grains like corn and quinoa and oats and teff and millet and amaranth and wild rice at 500 calories a pound, and beans and legumes and lentils and split peas at 550 to 600 calories a pound. These are the foods that are found in nature that are full of water and fiber. And when you eat foods intact like that, with the water and fiber intact, you get full easier, because water and fiber together create bulk, and bulk is what creates satiety. So water in and of itself doesn't help you lose weight or make you feel full, because it exits the digestive tract too quickly. But because water contributes to volume and it has weight, when it's in the food, like the whole plant food, it greatly increases satiety and thus your ability to lose weight. And it's just awesome. I mean, I wish I had learned about it earlier. There actually were plant-based books written about calorie density in the 80s. Dr. D. Nourish in 1980 wrote a bestseller called Eat More, Weigh Less, which I have since read. It's a wonderful book. And if you follow the principles of calorie density, you indeed can eat more and weigh less. And another best-selling book that's still a bestseller today is Dr. McDougall's Program for Maximum Weight Loss. That really explains the principles that I'm trying to teach. But really, it's just about eating whole food, eating in its whole food state. And you can't go wrong, because in addition to these being the most calorie dilute foods, they're also the most nutrient dense foods. So it's really a win-win situation. And it's true that to the right of the red line, there are some healthful whole fats, whole food plant fats like avocado, nuts, and seeds, but you just have to be mindful of those if you're trying to lose weight, because they are, much more calorically dense than things like fruits and vegetables.
And what about the argument that you might hear, but we need the good fats? We need the good fats.
Here's the thing. If you're overweight, you already have fat on your body, and so you have plenty of fat. So if you were to try my program and abstain from overt fats, adding fat for 21 to 30 days, I promise you're not going to be fatty acid deficient. But the thing is you need them. That's true. But it's impossible to be on a zero fat diet, because if you're eating enough calories, oats have almost 20% of their calories from fat. Even greens have fat. Fruit even has trace amounts of fat. So the problem in our country isn't that people are fatty acid deficient. It's that they're getting too much fat. So if you're worried, you can do like Dr. Esselstyn tells his heart patients, is take a tablespoon of flax seeds every day. They're very high in omega-3 fatty acids. You can sprinkle it on some fruit or put it over your salad or in your oatmeal. So I know there's a lot of doctors out there, not so much the plant-based ones, that are telling us to eat fat because it makes us thin. I have never seen anyone get thin eating fat, unless they were, very consciously controlling their portions and their calories. There's a lot of research being done now, and this is not my area of expertise. I heard about this from Dr. Rosanne Oliveira at UC Davis and Dr. Joel Kahn, but there's something called I believe it's the APOE gene, which is a genetic variation of a gene that determines how much fat an individual can eat and be overweight. And there are people like my husband, who's never been overweight or suffered from food addiction, who's very slender, that can eat as many nuts and seeds and avocado as he wants and be slender. And there's somebody like me that if I eat one Brazil nut, I start gaining weight. And so I do believe there's genetic variations. And unless you want to go through the cost of having, this tested, one way to know is if you're eating a lot of fat in your fat, it's probably you.
For sure. And I'm glad that you brought up food addiction, because I was wondering how you handle your students when they do have food addiction and they're making 5 cups of either white rice or brown rice for their family for dinner, and only 4 of those cups get consumed during dinner. And then after dinner, that other cup that they didn't need at all because they ate until they were satiated, they ate until they were fine. It wasn't Thanksgiving, but then they go and they eat all the leftovers. Right. And although it's still, calorically good, they're overeating. So how do you handle that?
So different people, we take different approaches. I work with a man named John Pierre, who's a celebrity fitness trainer, and different people, we take different approaches. But at the very beginning, we're so happy when people start abstaining from animal products, especially dairy and processed foods like sugar and flour and alcohol, that we don't necessarily even worry about them overeating on foods to the left of the red line at first. Because the truth is when they stop eating calorically dense foods like, like meats, which are 1,000 calories a pound, and dairy, which is 1,600, and sugar, which is 1,800, and bread and flour, which is 1,500 and 1,600, when they stop eating those foods, they generally lose weight anyway just by eating the more calorically dilute foods. So we try to get the food right first, but you pretty much always have to deal with the emotional component, which is that when people eat after dinner, meaning they're ostensibly full because they hopefully ate enough, they're not eating for hunger or survival. They're eating for reasons other than hunger, which are generally anger or loneliness or sadness or stress, or because they're tired or because they're bored. And you have to have them look at that if they want to stop this habit. There's a wonderful, very affordable program that we recommend to people by Dr. Roger Gould called shrinkyourself.com. He has a book by the same name. We have them do things like journaling. We have them make collages. And one of the things that often helps people is when they start doing fitness. Most people that are overweight, especially those that are obese, they're not really incorporating any kind of regular movement into their life. And it's funny that I'm talking about how great fitness is, because if you know my story, I didn't do anything till I was 51. I'm 56 now. I mean, I never exercised. I tried to, never do it. It was, and it's not my fault really, because if you think about the book, The Pleasure Trap, written by my mentors, Dr. Lyle and Goldhammer, they talk about the motivational triad that all organisms follow, which is seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy. And so if we're meant to conserve energy, well, why would we exercise? That expends a lot of energy. And it wasn't until that I broke my knee at the age of 50 and ended up in a wheelchair because I was so fat that I couldn't use the crutches or the walker, and gained even more weight, that I vowed that I was really going to do something about this and get in shape. And I've pretty much gotten in shape from the waist down. I still need to do some upper body stuff. But what I would say to people is, is that when you start incorporating some kind of movement in your life, with what you're able to do, because obviously, people in ultimate weight loss that are, several hundred pounds overweight, maybe they're in a wheelchair, you can't just give them the kind of workout that they have on the Biggest Loser, but there's often something that everyone can do. We had a girl that was in a boot for 9 months, but she could still work her upper body. There's usually, unless you're paralyzed, something you can do. And we suggest people get a pedometer and just take note of how much they're moving and just move 1 or 2 more steps each day. I mean, people have gotten really great results doing that, but I can't tell people how important exercise, or not exercise, I don't like that word because I don't want them to have to go to the gym, but just incorporating regular movement in their life is going to make a difference in their eating, because when you do that, especially first thing in the morning, it increases your self-esteem. You start feeling better about yourself because you've done something good for yourself, and it makes it a lot of times easier to not succumb to these temptations and cravings of the food. But again, if you're eating for emotional reasons or stress, if you don't deal with those reasons, it's not going to matter. I mean, we can tell people to if they're going to emotionally eat on things like cherry tomatoes or frozen grapes, instead of, chips or French fries, things like that, or cookies. We can often change the food. That's where their environment becomes super important, because I've always said, if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. So, it's a process. There's just a lot to do to solve this problem. And, as you know, in the United States right now, more than 3/4 of Americans are overweight, and half of those are obese. So, we got a lot of people that need this kind of help. And it's not, I don't want to say it's an easy fix. It's simple what they have to do, really. Eat fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, get sunshine, adequate rest, and move your body. So it's actually quite simple. But to get people to do it is difficult. And that's where I'm not the expert in how to motivate people to make change. By the time they come to me, they're usually quite overweight and quite ill and have tried every other program. And so it's sort of the last stop on the train for them. And, I don't get a lot of 20-year-olds that are, 10 pounds overweight, so to speak.
I have had some clients come to me who weren't yet ready to give up all their meat, all their dairy, or all their poultry or fish or what have you. But as long as they're willing to become much more plant rich in their diet, and we do decide to work together, I found that, applying a lot of what you talk about in the Ultimate Weight Loss Challenge, and applying a lot from your book Unprocessed, just getting them to up their fruit and vegetable, and then naturally there's less room for all of these other products, and get them moving when they haven't been moving, and still applying all of that. It makes a world of difference in their life, in their weight, in their health, in the amount of insulin that they might need to take, or, even coming off insulin altogether. And then when they're ready, starting to make more and more steps. So there can be a process as well, and not just, the big boom, but I love the big boom. The people who are ready to just go for it and, surrender to what they need to do. There's definitely something to say about them and the strength that they have.
Those are my favorite clients, by the way. Like, we have a few, like Shada, the ones that are, when you meet them right when they're ready, when they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and, they'll do whatever it takes. There's an old saying that people that are interested will do what's easy, and people that are committed will do, basically whatever it takes. And those are my very favorite kinds of clients, because they don't frustrate me. And, because that's the kind of client I was. When I went to True North, fat and sick, in 2011, Dr. Goldhammer and Dr. Lyle told me what to do. I did it. I lost 50 pounds, and I've never looked back. And so it still mystifies me why, when somebody that, is supposedly an expert, that has had the results that you want, that you wouldn't do it. And I do get frustrated, but I understand that food is a very powerful addiction, and that's why it is so hard. So, they say when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And so when you're ready, come to me. When you're not ready, go to you.
So that sounds good. That's fine.
I feel like we just opened a book and Chef AJ just spewed out all this information, which was fantastic. But I have a question now.
Sure.
Our focus so far has been on weight loss.
Yeah.
And I know that's what you focus on.
Right.
But for people like me and your husband who are thin and fit,
do everything the opposite of what I say.
Do everything the opposite, for real.
But as a trainer that abs are built in the gym, not in the kitchen. And so the first thing people need to do is, we don't want people to gain weight as far as like, we don't want them to gain fat. We want them to gain muscle. So that's where working out comes in. You know, you need to pump iron. You'll gain a lot of weight if you build muscles. But if you do need to put on some pounds for whatever reason, and by the way, let me just say this. If somebody has told you you're too thin, you're probably exactly normal weight. Because believe it or not, we believe what is normal by what is around us. Yeah. And because so many people are overweight and obese now, they've done studies that show that when somebody is actually morbidly obese, they're perceived only as obese. And when somebody is obese, they're perceived only as overweight. And now, because more than 3/4 of our population is overweight people are now seen as normal. So when somebody is normal weight, or God forbid thin, they're seen as abnormal or anorexic. So I would say if somebody is telling you you're too thin, first of all, nobody that's thinner than you will ever tell you you're too thin. I can tell you that right now. And especially as a woman, it's interesting how when you lose weight, how a lot of people get confronted by that, especially, you know, the females. So if somebody is telling you you're too thin, I would look at how thin they are, because if they're heavier than you, then there could be an aspect of some kind of jealousy going on, that maybe you aren't too thin. But let's say, for argument's sake, that you need to gain weight for whatever reason. Well, then eat to the right of the red line. You're a lucky person that can have an avocado every day. You can have smoothies with dates and almond butter. You can have, you know, nuts and seeds. You know, I still wouldn't eat these things necessarily.
Nice tomato and lettuce sandwich.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, you don't want to just eat a nut diet. You don't want to just eat fat. You still want to have your complex carbohydrates, your sweet potatoes, your rice and beans. But you can make a rich cashew sauce and have some of those, refined pastas, maybe made out of beans or lentils or rice. So you lucky
and
person.
Enjoy it without your wife. Because if I eat too much on the other side of the line, my body responds to that.
Yeah. And that's where I think where genetic variations come in. And I'm sure that, you know, one day there will be a test as easy as, like, say, like when we could go now, if we want to get our cholesterol tested, we don't even have to have a doctor's order. We can just go to any pharmacy, you know, and they'll do it. And I bet you one day there will be a test for this genetic variant, which shows, hey, no, you have this variant of this gene. You should only eat 10% of your calories from fat. Or you have this variant and you can eat 40 or 50. And I believe that there will be this test available. But again, you know, if you're overweight, you know, the fat you eat is the fat you wear. Dr. McDougall has been shouting this from the rooftops for 40 years. And even people that are slender, when they go on a low-fat diet, let's say they're following Dr. Esselstyn, not every patient of Dr. Esselstyn's was overweight, but when you go on a low-fat diet, regardless of what you weigh, you lose weight. How do we know this? Because I did an experiment with my husband without his permission. That's how I know there was no placebo effect involved. In 2008, I remember, it's so funny, it was August 1st, yesterday, 2008, I adopted a SOS-free, salt, oil, and sugar-free diet. And I was still overweight. I was doing it for health reasons because I had seen a compelling lecture the month before by Dr. Esselstyn, who was unknown to me at the time. But I saw this wonderful lecture on preventing and reversing heart disease, and he talked about oil. Now, I was a pastry chef, and I was using oil, and I was eating oil. It was, you know, plant-based oil. I didn't know there was anything wrong with oil. He made a compelling argument, like he does in the movie Forks Over Knives, how it's a processed food. It takes, 41 olives to make a tablespoon of olive oil, everything good about the olive, the fiber, the water, the vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, and micronutrients are thrown away in the processing, in the sludge. But even worse, and not only is it a 4,000 calorie a pound food with no fiber and nutrients, but it injures our endothelial cells, which are the life jacket of the circulatory system. So he made a very compelling argument. I didn't have heart disease. I had low cholesterol, but I said, this makes really sense. So no more oil. So being a chef, it wasn't very hard to use. As a matter of fact, of oil, sugar, and salt, oil is probably the easiest thing to get rid of. So I just stopped using oil. And since I'm not, since I make my husband's breakfast and send him lunch to work, and I make his dinner, he never did any of the cooking since we got married. I didn't tell him. And since I could cook, he really didn't make any difference in the taste of the food. So we stopped consuming oil on August 1st, 2008. I didn't tell him. He didn't notice. Food tasted great, tasted the same. 7 months later, we were supposed to go to a wedding, and my husband generally doesn't wear a belt. He doesn't have to dress up for work, so he doesn't wear a belt. But he was wearing a suit, so of course he was putting a belt on this day, and it was way too loose. And there was like 2 more notches, but there were no more notches. He's like, "Oh my God, I've lost so much weight." He didn't notice because it happened over a period of 7 months. And he says, "Oh my God, I'm dying." And so we didn't have a scale at the time, but we got one, and he had lost 20 pounds in 7 months without even knowing that I changed his diet just from stopping oil. And if somebody could lose that much weight, now remember, he's 6 feet tall. He was 160 pounds, so he was already thin. If he could lose 20 pounds in 7 months just by stopping oil without even knowing it, imagine what a person could do if they were stopping all these high-fat foods on purpose. In addition, he had this tumor, a very large benign tumor on his spine that was about the size, if you were to imagine cutting a tennis ball in half. And after stopping oil, because that was the only change he had made, it reduced to the size of a nickel. So I don't know what to tell you. I'd love to be able to do this experiment with other people, without them knowing, but it just works. Nathan Pritikin, who is one of McDougall's mentors, had the Pritikin Longevity Centers, and same thing, a very low fat diet, you will lose weight. And a lot of people say, well, it's not enjoyable. And that's because at first it isn't, because you're using these high fat, high calorie foods to get more dopamine production in your brain. And oil at 4,000 calories a pound and nuts and seeds at 3,000 produce a lot more dopamine than kale at 100 or apples at 200. But after a while, you neuroadapt to the taste of whole natural food. And especially if you start moving your body so you're getting those feel-good chemicals and all those endorphins in your brain, you don't have to use food to be the only source of pleasure in your life. And then the great thing is after a while, it starts making you sick. I mean, like I remember we went to Disneyland once, and the only thing we could find were these skewers in Adventureland but they cooked them with oil on the grill. And I remember I literally vomited because I hadn't eaten oil in so long, and I ate this, and literally I vomited. It's disgusting oil, and until you're away from it, the only thing that needs oil is cars. And not just like you're not supposed to drink milk except if the person's your mother. Oil is for cars. It's not for humans. We didn't evolve eating oil. It's not a natural food. It's not you can't find it in nature in any form. You can't make it in your own kitchen. I dare you to try to make olive oil or coconut oil. It's impossible. It's a process that requires a lot of refining, often including toxic chemicals called lye. I mean, that's why when all these paleo people are like, "Oh, eat coconut oil." How could our ancestors have eaten coconut oil? Coconuts, first of all, don't grow most places. Second of all, they had no tools to open the coconut, and even if they could somehow open it, they didn't have the machinery to refine it. So, when you stop eating oil, that's one of the changes. Like you said, you have some people that aren't willing to give everything up. I actually take oil away from people before meat. I mean, the first thing I take away from people is dairy, because nobody needs to be eating dairy. It's the most toxic and carcinogenic food. But after dairy, I would take oil away before meat. I mean, if for somebody trying to lose weight and neuroadapt, and then hopefully, the meat will be next on the list for them.
So when you mention meat, it makes me think of when people say, "But I eat kosher meat, so that's better."
Yeah. It's like that episode of Seinfeld where he said, "Oh, kosher, they bless the pig," or something. There was something funny that Kramer or George Costanza said. Well, kosher meat is, actually, I had a relative of an in-law that had a farm in Pennsylvania that sold kosher cows, and they are killed just as inhumanely and suffer just as much, number one. So, and I'm pretty sure they're still given the mass doses of hormones and antibiotics that non-kosher cows are given, which makes that, not healthy for us. 80% of the world's veterinary antibiotics go to livestock. So if you're eating meat, you're basically taking veterinary medicine. But, it's just like, I don't care if it's kosher or grass-fed or any of those nice adjectives. It's still a muscle. It's still high in cholesterol. It's still high in fat. So, those adjectives make you feel better about eating it, but it sure didn't make the cow feel any better to know he was killed for somebody that keeps kosher. And it's just still making you fat and sick, So, you can keep deluding yourself if you want that you're eating some kind of special meat, but it's still murder from an ethical standpoint, and it's still not healthy. If you read the China study, what do they say? That, certain populations consume, what is it, like, maybe 10% of their calories from animal products, but a primarily plant-based diet. And if you could maybe, do a couple ounces a few times a week, it may not impact your health. But the thing is if you're overweight and if you're already sick, you've already got a disease. So that's why I say just go plant perfect now, because that's the goal anyway. So why, I don't know, there are people that I guess do better with baby steps and transitioning, but that's not my personality. I'm a double Aries. And, when I got a Band-Aid stuck to me, I don't want it pulled off slowly. I don't want to suffer for the long term. It's just like, let's detox, let's withdraw, let's get the suffering over now, and let's just eat the healthiest diet on the planet. And speaking of the planet, you should interview Dr. Richard Openlander, because we're killing the planet by the amount of meat we're eating. It's not sustainable for people to be eating as many animal products as they're eating. So, let's start caring about somebody other than ourselves and do what's right for the planet, for our bodies, and of course the animals. It's a win-win-win. And that's what I got to say about that, Blech.
Let's leave it a bleh.
You mentioned your husband had a tumor on his spine, and I have the same. So I have it not on my spine, but on my kidney, and it's also been shrinking over the years. So it's amazing how powerful our food really is, and that we don't need to go to medication or surgery, and we can just go to our nutrition and our diet, and it changes our lives completely.
And I remember also when we first saw Brendan Brazier speak, and we were new to the plant-based world, and we were like, look at him, he's so skinny, you could see his neck, you could see his veins, and then like 6 months later that was Adam, and like, so everything you said is absolutely true. And we did get a little dark there, and I want to kind of change things up and make it a little bit lighter, and we have some questions for you. Sure. The first question is from Amy 10. She is in our Facebook group, Plant-Based Health, Nutrition, and Fitness. And she wants to know what your favorite soup recipe is.
Well, and you can get it at the Forks Over Knives website. It'll be in my next book. Probably, if you consider chili a soup, probably my red lentil chili. Everybody likes it, and just that is my favorite. But my split pea soup is really good too. And if you go to Google Chef AJ Foodie TV, the name of my TV show, I did 13 episodes, and we did an updated version of the split pea soup where we added some sun-dried tomatoes and shiitake mushrooms, dried mushrooms. So those are probably my two favorites. But soup is really the best thing to eat because, as we talked earlier about calorie density, remember, it's the water and the fiber together that create the bulk, which creates the satiety. So soups and stews and chilies full of water, what a wonderful thing to eat, both for fullness and just, even if you're not trying to lose weight, it's just, their soups are just so satisfying. So there's really no bad soup.
So in general, what is your favorite food to make?
Well, to make, let's see, because to eat, it's definitely potatoes and sweet. Okay, I'm going to tell you what it is, honestly. And I could eat this every day, and I try not to. I try to vary up and switch it up with different sweet potatoes. And I wish I had developed this recipe, but her name is Sandy Plewis. I believe she's in Australia. She's a blogger with a website called Vegans Eat Yummy Food. And she created the potato waffle. And what the potato waffle is, and as somebody who's Jewish, who hasn't had a decent potato pancake since I've given up oil, you can't. It's really hard to make latkes without oil. This tastes like Hanukkah every day, and I'm going to have it for lunch when we get off the phone. So what you do is you need to use like the Yukon Gold potatoes with the very thin skin. I mean, it may work with russets, but I don't think so. And it's definitely with sweet potatoes, they stick. So what you want to do is you get yourself a good nonstick waffle iron. Like mine was $20 at Bed Bath & Beyond. I used a coupon.
We have that in Canada.
Yeah, Krups or a Cuisine. Anyway, I got a good nonstick Belgian waffle iron. You want the Belgian with the big, thick squares. And so you got to microwave the potatoes because that gives them the perfect thing. If you steam them, they're too wet, and if you bake them, they're too dry. So you microwave like 4 Yukon Golds, and you try to get them to be like the perfect size, which usually is about 4 or 5 ounces. So you can put one in each square of the waffle iron. So you microwave them till soft. You press them in the waffle iron for about 10 minutes, and oh my God, they're like latkes. They're crunchy. They're like the best thing I've ever eaten. And how do I eat it? I eat it with applesauce and grated red onion. It tastes like latkes, and I never get tired of eating that.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that is my favorite thing to eat. And it's also one of my favorite things to make. Unfortunately, like if you have 20 people over, it's difficult. I suppose you could pre-make them and then maybe keep them warm. But man, when they come out of the waffle iron with those the indentations, they're like crunchy, like potato chips. And with the applesauce and onion, which is the way, like if you were making a latke, you would have grated onion in, but there's no onion in it. But by grating the onion into the applesauce, I am in heaven. I love this. And, once in a while I, eat it with salsa instead. But man, that is probably my favorite thing to eat. And then, of course, sweet potatoes. And what's great is there's so many varieties. I live next door to a mom and pop the Korean fruit stand or vegetable store called Farm Boy, and they get me I get the Stokes purple, I get the Hana yams, I get the garnet yams, I get the Hawaiian ones from Hawaii, the dark purple. What's the fifth? I know there's at least 5 kinds of sweet potatoes.
Jamaican, Caribbean.
They're all so good. So I can't get tired of eating sweet potatoes. They're just, if I had to live, if I had to pick, as much as I love the potato waffle, if somebody said you can only live on one food, I would probably have to pick the sweet potato because those are so good. I mean, that's the other thing, as somebody who's a former sugar addict, you try a Hawaiian potato. I mean, they are almost too sweet. They taste like
candy. It's candy.
It is. It's unbelievable. It's like crack. I can't even believe that you can eat these and they're allowed. They're so good.
So what about your favorite small kitchen appliance?
Oh, I'm going to say it's the herb scissors that were given to me by Maryland food coach Sharon Clupp McCrae, because I had ruptured a tendon last year, and it was 6 months I was in whatever this thing is they put on you. It was the middle finger of my right hand. I'm right-handed. And so I just couldn't use a knife. And I'll tell you, herb scissors make the most beautiful cuts when you're doing mint or basil. It's just like beautiful. It's like doing a chiffonade with a knife. So I really love my herb scissors. You can get them for about $12. So that is one appliance, or it's not really an appliance, but it's a tool that I really love. And I love my spiruli, to make the zucchini noodles. That's like about $20 at Bed Bath & Beyond. And okay. So I'm like, you're asking me, like, it's like asking a car buff, like what his favorite car part is. But I just got the Cuisinart fruit scoop. It's $99 at Sur La Table with a coupon. I got it for $79 with free shipping. And even though I already have the Yonanas machine and the Champion juicer and the Blendtec and the Vitamix, what's really cool about making ice cream in this one is you can use fresh, unfrozen fruit. And, I have a very small freezer. And so it's very nice to be able to just take some bananas and strawberries at room temperature and throw them in this machine. And in 25 minutes have ice cream. So I do enjoy that. That's a fun little machine, not too big.
That sounds delicious. What about pans, pots and pans?
Cast iron.
Cast iron?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Dr. Barnard talks about this, I believe, in Power Foods for the Brain. And I can't remember that he says, or was it aluminum that he says isn't good. I think in general, stainless steel is the best for most people. It's pretty non-toxic. I mean, there is something called waterless cookware that's made of titanium. It's super expensive. Most people cannot afford it. Most people can afford a good piece of stainless steel. I do have one piece of nonstick cookware that I've had for over 20 years. It has never chipped or peeled. It's from Pampered Chef. I am not afraid to use a nonstick saute pan. I know that some people aren't comfortable with that, but I would say for anyone listening that's new to just even cooking, that the one appliance I really couldn't live without is the Instant Pot electric pressure cooker. And it is a Canadian company, and they're wonderful. And they just came out with the 8-quart model. So I could cook 4 artichokes at a time now, whereas the other one I could only cook 2. And then you can make all your recipes very quickly and inexpensively using bulk ingredients like beans and grains. And I think that's a real game changer for people, because you don't have to have gone to culinary school to throw some stuff in a machine and push one button. So I really recommend a pressure cooker. And I like the Instant Pot because it's electric. You can set it, you can forget it. It's got a stainless steel insert instead of a nonstick. So that would be like if there was a fire, and after I knew my husband and dog were safe, if the fireman said, okay, one thing, that's what I would probably grab. Well, maybe I'd grab my computer, but I don't know. I'd probably grab the Instant Pot.
What about foods to barbecue?
Well, I live in an apartment, and we are not allowed to do that. And I've lived here for 22 years, so I don't barbecue. But people that do tell me things like portobello mushrooms are fantastic, and, grilled like bell peppers cut in half and, onions, those kind of things. But being an apartment city dweller, it's funny because somebody gave us a barbecue for our wedding, but the rules specifically state in the lease that we are not allowed to grill or barbecue here.
So if you check out our Instagram, you could see all the things that we've been barbecuing. We kind of put away the barbecue for a couple of years and we're right back on top of that now. So we're having a lot of fun with that. And we did have a lot of fun with you here today. We love your passion. We love your excitement. We love your ideas of appliances to be using in the kitchen. I feel like I need to go to Bed Bath & Beyond after I go through the blue bin looking for all my coupons that I threw out.
You can always get a free one online. If you sign up to be on their mailing list, they'll email you immediately a 20% off one.
Oh, that's what I need. More emails. And do you have a promo code for the Instapot that we could?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name, which is AJ, if you use that, it doesn't work on Amazon, but it works at instantpot.com. They'll give you $50 off. And they just had a tremendous Black Tuesday sale. The Instant Pot was $69.99, I think the lowest price ever. It usually costs with the discount about $100. Sometimes it's cheaper on Amazon, sometimes it's cheaper at the website.
And the family size one would be $100 also, or it'd be more?
No, I think it's a little bit more. I think it's maybe $20 or $30 more, the 8-quart. But if you are a family of more than 3, I would definitely get the 8-quart one, because it's just great to be able to make large quantities of soups and chilies, and then you don't need 2.
And I know that we talked about a lot of books here, and you referenced a lot of people that you look up to and that you look to for research. So I've been taking notes, and we are going to link to as many of those as possible in the show notes so that people can get to those and see what it is you're talking about. And if somebody wanted to contact you, what do you want them to do?
Well, please go to my website, which is the word eat, followed by the name of my book, Unprocessed, www.eatunprocessed.com. And there'll be lots of videos and webinars and teleclasses and all kinds of fun information, recipes.
And of course, we didn't really talk much about your book, Unprocessed, but we will be linking to it in our show notes as well. And just wanted to really thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for what you do and for being so fit and healthy and lovely, shining examples of what plants can do for you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
And there you have it. AJ's awesome. She just talks and talks and talks, but the information that she has is just great stuff.
And she talks and talks and talks. Don't forget to join us next week for episode 212, where we revisit Proteinaholic with Dr. Garth Davis to help you improve your quality of life through nutrition and fitness.
Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any other podcast listening platforms. We appreciate the feedback we receive from you. Every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans, it ensures other people will find us too. Thanks to our patrons. To become a patron, visit www.patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference. Connect and follow us on Instagram and Twitter @PlantTrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at www.planttrainers.com for awesome plant-based recipes and a list of our services. Email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so we can answer them on our upcoming Facebook Lives. We hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time, and have a healthy day.